Okay, so it is time for my monthly wrap, but unfortunately, fortunately, it really depends on how you view it. I have too many books to do one video for, so I'm going to have this monthly wrap of March be done in two parts. We're going to start with part one, where I show you my stats for the month, and I talk about the books that I've DNF'd, the books that I gave 1 star to, and the books that I gave 2 stars to. And then we'll come back with a part 2 later on, and I will talk about the books that I've given 3 stars, 4 stars, and 5 stars to. So let's get right into it, starting off with my monthly stats, which... Stats? Did I just say stats? There we go. My monthly stats for this month. So, as you can see here, these are my monthly stats. So, looking at the stars over here, as you can see, I have 3 5 stars, 1 4 star, 4 3 stars, 2 stars, and 1 star. That could have been a lot easier than it was. So let's just try that one more time. I have 3 5 stars, 1 4 star, 4 3 stars, 2 stars, and 1 star. Over here we have the genres that I covered for this month. I have 11 books that I read this month, which is 4 more than I have ever read in a single month. Woo! Record time. Okay. I read 5 fantasy books, 3 horror books, 1 sci-fi, 1 LGBTIQ+, and 1 contemporary. Which, is that correct? Yes, it is. Okay. So there are my genres for the month. Then we have the age groups. So I read 5 YA young adult novels, 4 adult novels, and 2 MG, 2 middle grade novels. As far as page count of those novels, there are those stats for you right there. So, I read 1 tome and a half, which is a 750 page plus book, 3 tomes, which are 500 plus page books, 5 half tomes, which are 250 pages plus. However, I have an asterisk next to the number 5 there, and that is because one of the books that I read was 495 pages, so it was only 5 pages off from being a tome. But anyway, and 2 quarter tome books, which are less than 250 pages. In total, this month, I read 4,673 pages, another record. This is a record by 2,340 pages, more than double that I have read since beginning this channel. Woo! That is a major woohoo for me. And honestly, that has nothing to do with the coronavirus. I just started reading a heck of a lot more, and yeah. It worked out really well, and if you've seen my April TBR, you will see that I have 12 books on there, so I've read 11 books this month. Can we do one more than this month and break another record next month? Tune in for my monthly wrap-up at the end of April to find out. But let's talk about all of the books that I at least started. Yes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this off by discussing the books that I DNF'd this month. Okay, and I'm going to talk to you about why. Part of the reason why I'm doing this is because there is a booktuber out there who every so often will go back in time to books that she has DNF'd and reread them. So I thought I will give this a go. I'll put out my DNFs as well, and then I can go back in like 3 years. If it is 2022 and you are watching this, hello! We're in 2020 and we're in quarantine thanks to the coronavirus. But anyway, let's move on from that because you don't want to hear about that right now. Maybe you do in 2022. Hi! But not in 2020. Alright, so first book that I wanted to discuss with you guys, this book made it onto my my March TBR, but it did not get read. This book is not technically a DNF, it is a DNS. I did not start this book. I have shelved this book, and that is Conspiracy 365 February Code Black by Gabrielle Lord. Okay, so I had this book on my March TBR, but I had it there because I thought it was a sci-fi. It turns out it was a thriller, and then I managed to replace this book with an actual sci-fi, which I will talk to in part 2, because I had a good time with that sci-fi that I replaced this with. I considered putting this onto my April TBR, but I have one massive issue with this book, and if you've read this, and if you have a Goodreads account, then let me know how you did it, because this book, ladies and gentlemen, has no page numbers whatsoever. So that kind of infuriates me personally. No page numbers anywhere to be seen. So This book gets a DNS, did not start. I mean, I don't think it's too much to ask. Can we have some page numbers, please? So, anyway, it might seem silly to you, but I'm not even going to begin this book because it's just going to be a headache for me to say get this far in and go, oh gosh, now I have to count every single page to work out what page I'm up to. It's just going to be a headache. So I'm so sorry, Gabrielle Lord. If you've written another book that has page numbers, I'll be more than happy to read it because this sounded interesting, but without page numbers, it's just not for me. So I'm sorry, I do apologize. Okay. Now for the first book that I DNF'd this month. Now, I gave this book a chance, you guys. I believe in a second chance at life for books, and I DNF'd this book in week 1 of March, and then I tried it again in week 2 because everyone said, Mr. Francie, you got to give it another go. It's so amazing. I tried it again in week 2, saying that if I DNF it a second time, it will be DNF'd for life. However, if you're watching in 2022, we might try and pick this up again. We'll see how we go. But anyway, it is my one classic for this month, unfortunately. So not a good start for me when it comes to classics. It was the first classic I attempted this year in 2020. It was F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. This book is just not a book for me. In week 1, I got a quarter of the way through and it bored me so much that I fell asleep when I got to the quarter of the way through. Literally because of how boring it was, my eyes started drooping and I literally fell asleep and dropped the book on the floor. That's how boring it was just for me. This is my own personal perspective. Then everyone was telling me, give it another go, give it another go, give it another go. And guys, I'm not kidding. You can see the bookmark there. I got to about the halfway mark, you guys. Yeah, actually even a little bit over. So I got to page 79 in this version anyway, and it just continued to bore me. So I ended up watching the movie to see if there'd be anything I'd missed, and I felt even less guilty about DNFing this book because it's just not the book for me. I'm not saying this is not the book for you. If you like your classics and, yeah, you want to read about historical fiction, you might love this book, but I just don't think it's for me. So, excuse me, so that one got DNF'd. The second book that I DNF'd, I'm just trying to look at the order there, I have that piece of paper in front of me, is this hefty fella, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This is the first book in the Wheel of Time series. Now, I have heard oh so much about this series, and I couldn't wait to begin. I did reserve it at my local library. You can see the sticker there and the lovely dragon there, showing that it is a fantasy book. I love how my library has dragon stickers on their fantasies. Anyway, it finally came in. I was really excited. I don't recall if this book actually made it onto my TBR for March or if I just added it once the book came in. But anyway, I read the prologue, did not like it at all. Then I read chapter 1, and what I realized is it's not necessarily the plot that I don't like, but it is Robert Jordan's writing style. Some people do say it takes a little time to get used to, but it's just not something that I have time to get used to, honestly. And also, I did not feel guilty DNFing this book at all because there are so many booktubers out there that love this series and that are reviewing it themselves. So, you know what? I say this with absolute sincerity, peace, blessings, and so much love. Have at it, guys. You guys can do this series and I'll just DNF it myself. So I was excited to read this book, but yeah, I don't feel guilty. And I think if you search on YouTube, the Wheel of Time book review, you will find many great YouTubers who have done reviews on this. So that's fine. I don't need to read the 12 book series on that one. I can let that go and everyone else can have at it. Nothing against Robert Jordan. It's just not the book for me. Okay, so the third book that I DNF'd this month was... oh, gosh. Okay. Think I might be sneezing in a moment. I'll just pause just a moment. Okay. I'm happy I paused because I did sneeze. I don't have the coronavirus. I just have a sneeze right now. A little bit dusty in here. Anyway, let's keep going. Alright, the third and final book that I DNF'd this month because okay, that was my third sneeze. We're doing well. I technically did not DNF this book. I DNS'd this book. I did not start it. But I DNF'd The Great Gatsby and I DNF'd The Wheel of Time, first book. I also DNF'd this book, East by Edith Patel. This book is the book that I feel the most guilty about DNFing, because I think it has such a wonderful... I'm trying so hard not to sneeze here. I think it has such a wonderful premise, and it is based off of a Norwegian fairy tale. This book is a YA fairy tale fantasy, and I have seen this book discussed in a non-spoiler way many times, and it certainly sounded like the book for me. The fairy tale that the Norwegian fairy tale that this book is based on, I read, and I absolutely loved that fairy tale. Then I came to this book, and it had way too many perspectives. There is a fine line, ladies and gentlemen, with Mr. Fancy that you should not cross. If there are too many perspectives, it bores me really quickly because I have no idea who I'm following. And I've even mentioned this, I think, in February about one of the books. I don't like February. Sorry. I don't like when there are too many characters thrown my way at once, and that is exactly what Edith Patel did here. I applaud her for what she's done, and I feel horrible that I DNF'd this book. I have not felt guilty about DNFing a book before, but I feel horrible for DNFing this book. But it's just way too many perspectives. If it was written in a much simpler way, no perspectives, just written as a plain book, no separate perspectives, I think I might have actually loved this book. But the multiple perspectives really threw me off because there were just way too many of them. Okay, so these 3 books are the 3 books that I DNF'd in the month of March. If you are watching this in 2021 or 2022, I might be reattempting to read these. Who knows? This book I did not even start, and I'm most likely going to be donating it and not having it in 2021 or 2022. So we'll see how that goes. All right, we're going to pause really, really quickly because my throat is now a little dry. And when we come back, we're going to discuss the books that I gave 1 and 2 stars to, starting off with what I did officially read and why I gave those books those ratings. We'll be back with that in just a moment. Okay, so before I get into the books that I've given 1 and 2 star to, I just want to apologize for all the interruptions in this video. I had a cold, like a couple of weeks ago, but I've been feeling so amazing and on top of the world for the past couple of days that it's just my luck that now that we're doing this massive March monthly wrap-up that I'm starting to sneeze and cough everywhere during a video. So I do apologize for the interruptions, but at least it's better than you seeing me sneeze and cough all over the place. Alright, let's get into those books that I gave 2 and 1 star to. Now, as you saw earlier with my stats, I gave 1 book 1 star and 2 books 2 stars. The book that I gave 1 star to is this one, R.L. Stine's Goosebumps, My Hairiest Adventure. Okay, now, I want to premise this mini review by saying that I don't think R.L. Stine is a bad writer. I like his writing style. I think his plots are okay. It's just that with this being a middle grade book, there was not a lot that happened at all. To make it even more disappointing, when the plot finally started getting exciting, and I'm not kidding when I say this, was 2.5 pages before the end of this book. Now, I can't be too critical because it is a middle grade book, and I think that someone who is the intended age range, if they read this, they probably would like it. But for me, I loved these books growing up as a child, but as an adult, I was looking for some kind of a horror, and it just didn't really do it for me at all. And as I said, it finally started getting interesting towards the end of the book. Very quickly, this book is about this boy on the front cover whose name is Larry Boyd. Larry is a part of a band at his school, primary school if you're Australian, elementary school if you are American, and they are part of this band competition as well. And while they're practicing, their band's practicing together one day, they go out for a walk in the snow, and Larry finds this bottle called Instatan, excuse me, and he shows it to all of his bandmates, thinking that if they can give themselves a tan, then they will look even better for the band competition. After they put the Instatan on, Larry starts growing fur on his hands, and he wonders what is in this Instatan bottle. I think I'll leave it at that. I don't want to spoil too much, but it sounds better than it actually is. You may love this though, and if you want to give this to your children, give it to them. There's no reason not to. It's not scary. As far as I'm concerned, it's really not that scary at all. Unless your children have a fear of growing fur on their hands, it's not scary at all. Where the next book I'm going to talk about, do not give to children. But yeah, definitely a 1-star book because the plot was incredibly boring for me, and it did not get interesting until the last 2.5 pages, and then the book suddenly ended. So that's why this book received 1 star from me. Excuse me. In saying that, I did love R.L. Stein's writing style so much that I have done some research and I have found out that he has written some adult horror books, and I have put one onto reserve at my local library, which will open again when the coronavirus pandemic is over. So it'll be a while, but I will continue to read R.L. Stein. I just rather read R.L. Stein adult books than read R.L. Stein middle grade. That's not to say that I didn't read middle grades that I loved this month. I absolutely did, and you will see them in part 2 of this video because some of them got really high ratings. Okay. Now, so that was my only 1-star book. On to my 2-star rated books. I have 2 of them, and the first one is Stephen King. Let's go to another horror. I read 3 horrors this month. 2 of them were rated 1 and 2 stars respectively. This book by Stephen King is called Pet Sematary. Okay, this book I found out way after I rated this book, and it's clearly way after I read this book, that this book is not meant to be viewed as a horror, despite the fact that it is a horror by Stephen King, and it is considered one of the top 3 most scary books that he's ever written. But anyway, apparently this book is not meant to be viewed as a horror, and it's more a book that revolves around grief and how to deal with grief and loss of humans, animals, that kind of stuff. And to that end, I agree, this is a really good book, but I went into this book wanting to be scared, and I just wasn't. And that's a big part of the reason why I gave this book 2 stars. I did end up reading another Stephen King book during this month, and it got a higher rating. You'll see it in part 2. What I came to realize is I love Stephen King's plots. I just don't like his execution when it comes to horror and trying to scare me, because he hasn't really done it yet. So, yeah, that's that. But that's what this book is basically about. It's about this family that moved to a new home in a different state, and the wife is dealing with someone who died. The daughter is dealing with an animal that died. The father is dealing with something that died as well, and everyone's just kind of dealing with grief in their own way. But yeah, there is a pet cemetery also in this book that the kids like to go to bury their pets in, and there's a bit of a twist that occurs with this pet cemetery. The twist was great, it just didn't scare me, so 2 stars. The second book that I gave 2 stars to is this book, Pool Boy by Michael Simmons. Okay. Michael Simmons is very lucky, and I say this with a lot of respect to any writers, because bless anyone who can publish a book. Credit to them, even if it's self-pub, which I don't believe this book is. I don't know if it's self-pub or not, but I don't think this is. But bless anyone who can publish a book. It's just, if I'm to give an honest review, Michael Simmons is very lucky that he added something at the end of this book that helped bump up the rating, because this book is a character-driven book. The difference between a character-driven book and a plot-driven book is that a plot-driven book is all about the plot driving things forward from page 1 all the way through to the end. A character-driven book is more a meandering plot that follows characters going about their day-to-day mundane lives, and the purpose of the book is just to learn more about the characters, not to follow them along in this, unfurling plot that goes along throughout the book. I did not know this was a character-driven book before I went into it. In fact, the one thing I did know about this book is that it deals with the riches to rags trope, which I found to be really interesting. The blurb basically says that there is this boy who, I forgot his name, but anyway, it doesn't matter. There is this boy who is living with his family who are very rich, and due to reasons, they are not rich anymore, they lose their house, they lose a lot of things that they once had, and the boy ends up working for his pool cleaner. And I thought, how amazing is this going to be? It's going to be great to see this kid who had everything he could ever want delivered on a silver platter, and now he has to go through the struggles of someone who lives an everyday life, or even someone who's a little below that poverty line. And I thought it would be amazing. But It just wasn't. I did not appreciate the fact that this is a character-driven book. I did not appreciate the fact that this doesn't happen in the book, but to give you an example, let's say the main character goes into a convenience store and looks at a chocolate bar. If it is a plot-driven book, the character will go in, buy the chocolate bar or not buy the chocolate bar, leave within a sentence or two, and carry on with the plot. If it's a character-driven book, the character goes into the convenience store, looks at the chocolate bar, ponders about whether or not they want the chocolate bar, all the reasons why they want it, all the reasons why they don't want it, what everyone else thinks, acts, what they imagine he should do, and what his thoughts are considering what they think that he should do. And then finally, 10 pages later, he will come closer to a decision over whether or not he's going to buy the chocolate bar or not, but then probably still doesn't because we probably still need to wait another 5 pages because another character has come in and this character wants to buy a different type of chocolate bar, so we now need to consider that type of chocolate bar instead. And it's just really, really, really mundane. The plot is there, it's really, really short. It is a good plot, however, even though it's only a quarter of the book is of the plot. But the ending was done really, really, really well. And that's why it got 2 stars, but I couldn't go any higher than that. These are the books that I'm showing you in part 1. Pool Boy, Contemporary by Michael Simmons, Adult Contemporary 2 stars. Stephen King's Pet Sematary, Horror, Adult Horror 2 stars. Goosebumps, My Harriest Adventure by R.L. Stine, Middle Grade Horror 1 star. Conspiracy 365 February Code Black, I did not even start and won't be because I've already said why. East by Edith Patel that I DNF'd because of it has too many perspectives. The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, the first book in the Wheel of Time series that I DNF'd because the writing style was just way too much for me, and I do apologize, but it just was. And F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, which is, this book is a fantasy. This book is a YA fairy tale fantasy. This book is an adult fantasy, I do believe, and this book is a classic. F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. I tried it once, DNF'd, tried it the second time, and DNF'd it for life because it was just, I'm sorry, F. Scott Fitzgerald, it was just too boring for me. Other people love it, but I did not. And that is where we're going to end it. So, once again, these are the books that featured in this part 1 of my monthly wrap-up for March, but because there were so many books that I read this month, we are going to do 2 parts. So we'll be back with part 2 a little later on today. Until then, letting you guys go, peace, blessings, and so much love. If you have any comments, thoughts, or questions about anything that I've brought up in this video today, please do not hesitate to let me know in the comments section below. But in the meantime, happy reading. Thank you so much for watching. So much love to all of you, and stay safe during this very tough corona pandemic. And keep reading. Happy reading. Bye.